Well, here we are, another beautiful sunny day in Oakland, California, coming at you with another episode of Kinstretch with the Fitness Alchemists. Today we're going to be breaking into a brand spanking new setup for hip internal rotation, brought to you by Will playing on his living room floor with how to stretch his hip, and it turns out works pretty well, especially if you have any troubles with finding internal rotation setups that don't bug your back. This one might be a key one for you to file away and remember. So today, good call, Hannah reminded me, you're going to need some props, including a pillow to support your knee for that hip internal rotation setup. You're also going to need a table height surface a little later on. A counter could work, although that'll probably be pretty high. A stool could work too, if that's all you've got. But basically this is just a chance for us to work on some hip external rotation from a standing position. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But for now, let's go ahead and warm up with some hip cars from a side lying position. So go ahead, start laying down on your side. You can throw that pillow underneath your head or just use an arm for a bicep pillow. And from here, create a brace through your midsection by pushing your hands into the floor. Commit to keeping your whole upper body and torso still as you begin your first hip car. Drive your top heel behind you. Check in on how much extension you have, and then begin lifting your shin to the ceiling. Smoothly bringing that thigh forward and sweeping it across the line of your belly button to make contact with your bottom knee, and then go ahead and go the other direction. So during this first rep, you're really looking into what kinds of range of motion do you have easy access to? What are you able to find without too much effort? Maybe about 50% effort is appropriate here for this first rep. Okay, and then for a second rep, we're going to turn up the body tension and do another pass. Start reaching your heel behind you, but this time really try to feel for the sensation of contraction that pulls you into each position. So as you're reaching behind you, you might find that in your glute and hamstring. As you lift your leg, it might be more on the outside of your hip. And then as you bring your knee in front of your belly button, it's going to be on that hip crease on the front of your hip that you are looking for contraction sensation. And then go ahead, take it back the other way. Really trying to articulate your way into every single end range option that your hip has. Making your way, taking your time to finish up this second rep. Okay, and then we're going to spice it up a little bit further by working on a straight leg hip car variation. So go ahead, straighten out that top leg, and if possible, set your ankle on the floor to start and try to push your ankle down into the floor. This might not be an option for you, so you're just reaching your ankle for the floor, but if you do find contact, really engage that contact so you can feel contraction in your inner thigh. And then start reaching your straight leg back behind you, imagining that you're cutting imaginary grass with your ankle. And then when you find end range extension, begin lifting your straight leg and send some specific awareness to your knee. Is your knee still straight, so your leg is straight, or has it started to bend unconsciously? As you sweep your leg all the way around in a circle, go back to where you started, cutting the grass with your ankle, and then start going forward. This direction, really try to pull your kneecap up your thigh the whole way, knowing that that will limit the size circle that you can make with your hip, especially compared to the bent knee version of this movement. So a straight leg hip car is always going to be a little bit smaller than a bent leg hip car just because of the added tension in the movement. And let's do a second pass there, trying to make your hands just a little bit heavier into the floor, really anchoring, and use that upper body contraction to help solidify your torso base. Taking your time, pulling your kneecap up your thigh as best you can to maximize the stretch that you find at every position. This time as you come back, recommit to that straight knee. Just stopping your circle a little short of end range if you feel your knee bending. So you're really teaching your brain how to control a straight leg in this setup. There it is. Very nice. Okay. Now let's go ahead and flip over and work on the other side. Starting here with bent knees. Nice stable brace at about 50%. Let this be your checking in or your inventory rep for the day. So drive your heel behind you. Leave the option open that this leg might feel very different from your other leg. So you really want to come at it with a fresh perspective. You don't know exactly how your hip is going to feel. So you really want to stay open to whatever sensations pop up for you. As your shin reaches up to the ceiling in either direction, really fight to keep your belly button pointing forward, your hands heavy into the floor. Good. And then we're going to build on intensity for the second rep. So a little bit more upper body tension. Use that brace to send a little bit more contraction effort into the moving leg. And look for 360 degrees of contraction. Every single angle registering for you as an active contraction effort. Go ahead, reverse that rep back, taking your time, pausing if you need to solidify that sensation of contraction at any angle, and being sure that you're working all the way there at your end range of motion. Okay. After your second rep at that higher intensity, now we're going to move to a straight leg hip car. So straighten out the leg, press your ankle into the floor, and take a moment to feel your quad contract to pull your kneecap up, and commit to keeping that contraction as we start to reach the leg behind you. Your body would love to try to bend the knee, so keep that leg straight and then start to lift your straight leg. Doing a super slow motion arc with your heel. So you're drawing a nice big circle, coming all the way around, trying to cut the grass with your ankle. So really searching for the floor. And then when you get back to where you started, go ahead and reverse course. Keeping your hands heavily pressed into the floor, your abs on, not letting your pelvis turn towards the ceiling even as you send your straight leg that way. Good. Okay. Second rep, I want you to lean into your hands so heavy that it almost feels like your hands are more heavily pressed into the floor than your torso. So you're actively leaning forward as you do this second rep. Keeping your kneecap tight, your thigh contracted. Reaching out through the end of your heel to really find that straight leg version of your hip car. Sometimes it can be helpful to imagine that your leg is 2 or 3 times as long as it actually is, and trying to control that through space. Sometimes that can help you get that long, straight leg feeling and resist that bend at your knee. Good, very nice. Okay, so you should feel pretty warmed up through the hips now. Let's now come to a forearm and knees position. If this really doesn't feel good for you, you can go ahead and use your standard quadruped, whatever that position is, and then start to curl your tailbone under and start moving into your flexion shape for your spinal car. So you're going segment by segment into this flexion side of your cat-cow segmentation. Taking your time, again, just doing an inventory on your spine. From this rounded shape, take a moment and try to pull the floor towards your knees with your elbows. Don't let your body shift forward at all, but just feel that that adds tension on the front side of your body. And then use that tension to keep your upper body still and just start tilting your tailbone back and forth. So you're trying to be as specific as possible to just the very base of your spine, while you're actively pulling the floor towards your knees with your upper body, with your arms. Back and forth. Good. 10 more seconds trying to articulate your SI joint, your lower lumbar, segments of your spine. Good. Now on this next extension effort where you're trying to reach your tail feathers up to the ceiling, let that be the beginning of a full spinal extension car, moving segment by segment up your spine into extension. And as you start to get to your mid-back and upper back, commit to not letting your shoulder blades just relax and passively collapse, but keep trying to pull the floor actively towards your knees. Now, Hannah's doing a great job of not shifting forward, but that's one thing you want to check in. Have you let your shoulders drift forward over your forearms? If so, recorrect and bring those shoulders right over your elbows. Take a moment here to feel your upper back contract, as if you're reaching your sternum forward and up, your collarbones opening up. Keep that effort and start tilting your pelvis. 30 seconds here. It might be a very small amount of motion. It might be so small that an outside observer doesn't see any movement, but that doesn't really matter. The key part is that you are tuning in to the sensations available to you in this end range position. So keep tuning in, 15 more seconds. Trying to just open up whatever movement is available there and capitalizing on it. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. Good. Okay, and then go ahead and have a seat, and we're going to finish up our warm-up here with just getting some movement in of your kneecap, your patella. Okay, so find a comfortable seated option, straighten out one leg, and then you're going to place your thumbs at the top side of your patella towards your thigh, right up against the border of that patella, and then use your 2 index fingers on the opposite border of the patella so that you can kind of clearly see that patella. And then we're going to use the fingers to move the patella passively up and down the leg. And really we're just checking for restriction. So that's sort of the assessment component of this passive car. Where or what does that restriction feel like? And then the simple motion is actually going to help work through some of that restriction and bring a little bit of movement option to this part of your body. If everything's moving as normal, great. We're just hydrating this joint a little bit. But very often, especially if you have a history of knee pain, if the patella isn't moving, then one of the things we need to work on is to just get that patella to move freely up and down. Okay. Okay, now relax for a moment and articulate the sides of the patella. Okay, so you might use 2 index fingers or 2 thumbs, whatever feels comfortable for you. This is going to be a lot less motion, but just play with trying to move your patella side to side now. Quick note, if this makes you feel like nauseous or weird, a little skeezy, you don't have to keep doing this, but that is a comment that I've gotten in classes pretty often actually, 2 or 3 times from different people. It can just be weird to see this part of your body kind of wiggling around. And then try the other side. So starting with your thumbs at the top border and your index fingers at the bottom border, just moving up and down. This is also a good movement to file away for repeat efforts on your own. If you're someone who really struggles with all the kneeling work that we do, be it in quadruped or tall kneeling, if you just know that that pressure on your knees doesn't feel good, then likely you could benefit from a daily dose of just trying to get your patellas to move. Relocate your fingers on the outsides of your patella and notice that movement side to side. Again, if there's any restriction, just gently pushing against that restriction, but not forcing anything. All right, and relax. Okay, So we're going to get into this setup now. You're going to want to grab your pillow to go underneath your knee. Now, for the setup to really work well, you need to find some, not unstable object, but some very stable object that you can notch your ankle up against. So the corner of a desk works well, a pillar or a corner of a wall will work well. We're going to use just a little notch in the wall here so that Hannah can put her foot right in there in a moment and use it to kind of torque the hip against. So you really want to have confidence in that whatever object you're picking is not going to move. And then you're going to place the inside of your ankle or foot, so this side, right up against that immovable object. And then your knee is going to be perpendicular to that spot, so straight out from that spot. And that'll be the beginning of your setup, okay? Now, with the pillow underneath your knee, you might notice that your pelvis sort of tilts so that your other knee is on the floor or towards the floor, and that's by design, that's part of the setup. So go ahead and let your pelvis tilt that way, and then accentuate that by dropping your hip to the side that you're stretching. So Hannah's stretching her left leg first, so she's going to be dropping her hip to the left and using that lean to the left to hunt for a stretch in the whole back side of the glute. Okay, so think back pocket area. You could also feel it maybe on more of the side of the hip, but we're really just trying to feel, oh, that part of my body is getting long. It is beginning to stretch. Once you find that little bit of stretch, just a small amount of stretch, we're going to bias rotation by beginning to walk the arms to the left. Because the foot is fixed in place and you've leaned, the thigh bone isn't going to move too much, but the pelvis and the spine are going to move. So now that means that we have located a rotational torque on the hip joint, and you're just going to settle into a stretch here. So while you're setting up here, if your knee is really talking to you, you might think of walking your hands back, settling into that lean again, finding a little more comfortable angle on the knee, and then walking back into it. That's one concern spot. But the main thing is you want to feel like you're set up in a strong position with your upper body while you're stretching here. Okay. Now from this stretch position, we're going to do some isometrics, the pales and the rails. So we'll start with the pales contraction. Whatever side or whatever object you're pushing against, if you begin to push your inner ankle into that object, you will be generating a pales contraction. So just start that little bit of pressure with the inside of your ankle against whatever object or wall you're using, and that will be how you find a rotational contraction. You can see I'm sort of gesturing this rotation on Hannah's thigh. That is the direction of rotation that you'd be finding if you were on your left side here. Okay? Once you lock into that contraction effort, slowly begin ramping it up, using that added pressure to more and more clearly feel that line of tension that is keeping your hip from rotating further. So we're trying to contract the long stuff in this setup. Ramp it up to 50% effort. Continue building that effort up to 75% effort if it feels safe on the knee to do so. And then hold on to this 75% effort for 15 seconds. You should be feeling that your upper body is working hard to support your position. It's resisting the push of your leg against that object. Continue holding. 5, 4, 3, 2, keep your brace, keep your body tight, and now think of reversing the rotation of your thigh. So now you're trying to reach your inner ankle away from whatever object you're propped against. You're finding the contraction effort in the tissue that's shortening, both on the outside of the hip and on the inside, near your groin, where your thigh connects with your pelvis. Find this contraction, maybe cramping it. 4, 3, 2, and relax. Now, as you relax, imagine stretching more into that hip. Think of that thigh bone driving up through your back pocket area, really leaning to your left if you're on your left leg, and maybe walking your hands more to the left if it feels safe to do so, if you feel like you have room to do that. Hannah's doing some nice deep breathing to emphasize the relaxation that she's after during the stretching period. And on the next inhale, go ahead, pack that air into your abs to prepare for your next Pales Rails. And light pressure at first, begin pushing your inner ankle against the prop that you're using. As you get a feel for that rotational effort, go ahead and ramp up the intensity of that effort up to 50%. Continue building on up to 60, 70. Continue building to your greatest safe effort. Just 10 seconds of this effort. Make sure it feels safe, but make sure it's also intense for you. 5, 4, 3, 2. Keep your body braced and reverse the rotation. Don't let anything move, but do try to reach your ankle away from the object that you're working with. 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Okay. Once you're all the way relaxed, go ahead and come out of this position and just take a quick lay down on your back. Okay, we're going to give your knees a break and also check in on a little rotation of that thigh. So whatever thigh you were just stretching, whatever hip joint, you're going to lift that leg, think shin parallel with the floor, so you're in sort of a tabletop position on that leg. Brace your torso and begin rotating your thigh bone one way and then the other without letting the angle of your thigh change. So you're not letting the thigh move side to side, you're just rotating the thigh bone and finding complete stops. So this is your hip capsule car. And this is when your brain really has a chance to assimilate those changes that we just made with our Pales Rails. So very critical step to any sort of change-making process that might be happening with the Pales Rails and mobility work that we're doing. Good. Couple more. These will come back a little later in a higher intensity setup, so file them away. And relax. We won't do the other leg quite yet because we're going to stretch it. So find your same setup. You might have to reorient your body if you're using the same prop. For our setup here, we're going to kind of be in a similar setup just now with the right leg. So hook that foot against the object so your inner ankle is fully supported. Then let your pelvis drop to the right if you're on your right leg and start hunting for that stretch in the back pocket area. Good. Once you hone in on that stretch, begin walking your hands to the right to bias an internal rotation of that hip. Good. And sometimes end range position can be guarded by the nervous system. So part of what you're after here is just letting your nervous system know that this is a-okay, this position is safe, it's just maybe new. So you want to give it a second to calm down. Realize that there is no threat. If, however, it does feel very threatening and you're not able to relax into it, then that's good information too, and it means you just need to back out of it a little bit. All right, so from this end range stretch, begin your Pales contraction by pushing your ankle against the prop that you're using. Use that to derive a rotational effort at the hip. Really find and feel that rotation. Begin ramping up the intensity of that rotational effort to 50%. Then steadily build on to that all the way up to 75% effort if it feels safe. And then we're going to hold that effort for a nice long 15-second contraction effort. Noticing how your upper body is doing some good work to keep you stable, to feed tension into that thigh, into that hip. 5, 4, 3, hold on to your efforts, and now reverse the rotation, thinking of reaching your ankle away from the prop that you're using and increasing the internal rotation of your hip joint. Hunt for that cramp feeling not letting your body move. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. As you relax, realize that your body might just allow you into a deeper position. So maybe lean into that side a little bit more. Maybe rotate by walking your hands a little bit further. But really, you do want to find your safe end range stretched position. Okay, knowing that you'll be looking a little bit different than Hannah, likely, just because your hip is different than Hannah's hip. And from this new end range stretch, take a couple deep breaths, settle into it. And then start up your Pale's contraction, beginning to push your inner ankle against that prop. Thinking rotation as you build on effort to 50%, 60, 70, and continue your build of effort all the way up to your greatest safe effort. If this feels real strong for you, then maybe you'll take it up to 100% effort. If not, maybe you'll hedge it right at 65 or 70. 5, 4, 3, 2, stay strong and braced, and now reverse the rotation. Think of reaching your ankle away from your prop that you're using, increasing the rotation on your hip, and cramping whatever tissue does that increase in rotation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Melt away that contraction slowly. Let your nervous system settle, and then make your way out of it. Once you're free, lay down on your back, and we're going to do a few hip capsule cars here on this side. Okay, so find your brace, flatten your spine against the floor. Imagine that that thigh bone is an axle in space, and it's just going to start rotating so that your shin and ankle move out to the side, but your thigh bone just rotates. It's not going to move side to side. And as you work on these, I want you to just realize that you could do this hip capsule rotation from a whole variety of positions. You could, in theory, do it from every single angle of your hip car or any mid-range position of your hip as well. So it's not the position that indicates a hip capsule car, it's just the action that you're doing, this rotation of your hip. Nice. Excellent. Finding those complete stops, one more rep in each direction. Just trying to really own whatever changes have just happened at your hip from those isometrics. And then go ahead and relax. Right, and here we are now with the table prop. So if you need to pause and move your setup around so that you can be near a table or a surface, that's where we're going to work from a standing position now. And you want to start by just setting your one leg, doesn't matter which, up on the table. And this might take some doing. You might need to use your other arm to help you come onto the table. And you can see here, Hannah has just the ankle on the edge of the table. It's not necessarily critical or a possibility that your shin is going to be parallel with the table, so don't worry about that. If your knee is floating here off the table, then we want to throw in that pillow underneath that side so that we're somewhat more supported here. Okay, so take a moment here to find your setup. Now you might recognize this front leg as the front of the 90-90 position while the back leg is standing. And we're going to work just like you would in 90-90 on hip external rotation of this front leg. So begin by leaning your torso forward, thinking of lifting your tail feather behind you so that your spine is one strong unit that's just leaning forward. And as you lean forward more, you should be finding some tension in the back of that front leg, in the glute area of that front leg. Okay. Now once you've found that position, found that end range angle, start generating a Pale's contraction. That is, push your ankle and knee down into the table. Okay? And as you get a feeling for that effort, use that effort to bring your spine back upright, pushing on the table the whole time, Standing tall, once your shoulders get over your hips, pause there. Now instead of pushing on the table, think that I'm asking you now to lift your ankle and knee up off of the table. That won't happen. That's an impossibility. But you can use that to pull your spine back forward into that end range stretch that you had a second ago. Okay. Once you get to end range, pause, create the pails effort into the table, push yourself back. Keep pushing until your shoulders are all the way over your pelvis. Pause, think light shin off the table, and begin pulling yourself back into position. Good. Make sure as you continue here for the next 30 seconds that you are actively changing the direction of your pressure, either pushing down into the table as you bring your spine upright, and then taking the time to change that directional effort. So now thinking up with the leg as you pull yourself forward. This is so that we can try to be specific with the tissue that we're training. On the way up, you are specifically training the back of the hip, the hamstring, and all of that long tissue. As you come forward, you're trying to train the front of the hip crease, and all of the tissue that is shortening as you lean forward. Good. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. Good. And bring your leg off of the table. Stand for a second, shake it out. One thing to realize is that that's a lot of work, not just for the stretching leg, but also for the standing leg. So give yourself a little break to shake it out. And then let's set up with the other leg on your surface. Now, if you're trying this at home and you really don't find a good setup, please keep in mind that 90-90, maybe with the prop under your front knee, is a perfectly legitimate substitute movement. And that's maybe a little bit more familiar for you, okay? So the standing aspect is just a little variation. So from this setup, lean forward, find that stretch in the back side of the glute, trying to think how deeply can you bow that stretch, how deep to the joint. Once you've found your end range, press down with the knee and the shin, and use that effort to bring your spine upright and tall. Keep pushing down with the shin until your spine is all the way vertical. Then pause, generate a up thought with that front leg, an up contraction, thinking light with the ankle and the knee as you pull your spine forward again into your stretch. Pulling, pulling, pulling all the way to end range. Then pause, make the front leg heavy, push the surface away as your spine comes upright. Good. Really trying to generate contraction again in that long tissue. Then think light with your front leg. Use that light feeling to generate contraction on the front of the thigh, the front of the hip, and really cramping maybe that hip crease area. Once you can't go any further forward, down pressure with the leg for your pales contraction to take you back upright. Continue back and forth, 20 more seconds. You can see Hannah has taken her hands off the table. That's an option just to put a little bit more load into this leg as you pull yourself forward and push yourself back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Great. Okay, go ahead, pull that leg off. And now we're going to try another hip capsule car like we did on the floor, but this time from a plank position. So you can go ahead and put your hands right on that surface. If it doesn't feel good to do that, you could use a countertop or the floor. Just know that that'll be a little bit more load for your plank. And then from here, you're going to bend one leg, bend one knee. Again, think of that thigh as an axle that's not going to change angle, and begin rotating your thigh here. We're just going to do 20 seconds, so I really want you to maximize the contraction effort in your abs, in your arms and shoulders, and in that leg that's staying on the floor. And all of that should help you find a little bit more tissue with which to rotate your moving leg. Good. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. If you need a wrist break, shake it out. And then we get right back into a plank, curling your tailbone under to find that strong plank feeling, bringing your other leg off the floor, committing to keeping the thigh angle as you start to rotate that thigh joint, that hip joint. I keep saying thigh joint. Thigh joint is not a thing.
Don't make me laugh right now.
Thigh bone's connected to the pelvis bone. Good. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Good. Shake it out. All right. We're going to do one more round through both of those options. So go ahead, find your 90-90 setup here again. It's really just 90 degree on your front leg, so just 190. This time we are going to incorporate some cueing for the back leg so that you can get that working as well. If that's confusing for you, just focus on the front leg, okay? So start by leaning your body forward into a stretch, keeping your chest nice and tall so your spine is straight, but you've leaned forward from that hip. You're finding your end range hip external rotation on this front leg, okay? Now, as you begin pushing your thigh bone, your shin rather, down into the surface to find your Pale's contraction, also I want you to try to pull the floor forward with your back leg. Okay, so both legs are almost like trying to scissor together, and then use that effort to start driving your spine tall, shoulders coming over your pelvis. Okay, and then at this tall position, think light with your front leg. Squeeze your back glute to help drive you forward into that end range stretch again. So you're driving yourself forward, pushing the ground behind you now with that straight leg. Then pause, push the front leg down. Think of dragging the floor forward with your back leg and start bringing yourself upright. And then pause here, think up with your front leg, and think about driving the floor behind you with your straight leg, with your standing leg. Good. 15 more seconds, moving at your pace into your end range and strongly away from that end range. Good stuff. 5, 4, keep working. 3, 2, 1, and relax. Nice work. Give yourself a little break between sides. And then set up on the other leg.
This leg is so different.
Each side's gonna be different, so take your time to really feel confident with your setup, because we really want to maximize the loading here. And lean forward to find your stretch. From this stretched end range, begin generating pressure down into the surface with your front leg. And also think about dragging the floor forward with your back leg. So you're generating contraction on the front of that hip. And then use both of those things to help drive your spine upright and begin this kinetic stretch. When your shoulders get over your pelvis, pause, think up or light with your front leg, and think about pushing the ground behind you with your back leg as you pull yourself back into that end range position. Pause, push with your front leg, pull the floor forward with your back leg, and use both of those contraction efforts to bring your spine upright. And then again, think light with your front leg, push the floor behind you with your back leg, and pull your spine back into that end range stretch. Actively pulling, 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 trying to unlock a little bit more angle at your front hip. All right, and last 10 seconds, continuing to move at your own pace, really finding strong contractions in both directions. 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. All right, come off of that setup, and we're going to revisit our capsule car from a plank position. If the last round felt pretty easy for you, you're going to want to bring your hands lower, so maybe to the floor or to a lower height surface, but the table works fine as well. Really curl the tailbone under, find a strong plank. Hold on to that plank as you bring one foot off the floor, bending the knee, and start capsule rotations. 30 seconds of complete stops. So either end range position is going to be the hardest for your body, so it's going to resist getting into those, and that's why I emphasize the high intensity contraction, so that you might find just a little bit more rotation in each direction here. Good, 10 more seconds. Don't give up your efforts. Strong arms, strong down leg. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Relax. Go ahead, set that leg down. Take a moment to breathe. And if you feel like you didn't need a break just then, that means that this second leg, you're going to need to work just a little bit harder, okay? I want you to spend the effort so you need a break after 30 seconds. Find your pelvic tilt, find that strong ab wall feeling, bend your other leg off the floor and begin 30 seconds, active rotation to a complete stop, and then active rotation in the other direction to another complete stop. Back and forth, noticing the signals your body is sending you about, this is hard, I want to stop, please just relax, and just focusing on your rotational effort, focusing on your brace. 10 more seconds. Keep pulling your ankle into its end range position. 4, 3, 2, 1, and let that go. All right, excellent work. And again, if that hip internal rotation setup worked well for you, please bookmark this class so that you can return to it. Have a great one.